I guess I like solving problems. I like being connected to the world.
We came to this country, happens to be June 15th, 1940, leaving from the port of Genoa on the SS Manhattan to come to the United States. My mother wanted to be safe from Nazism. Switzerland was surrounded by Nazi-occupied countries in that year, and she also wanted a better life for her children. She talked about the American dream, and she told us, both of us, that anything is possible in America. And it was an inspiration for us. We believed it, and we lived by it. And in a way, I have lived by it.
When I finished my third term as governor, I came on the board of National Democratic Institute. They asked me if I could be an election observer in Bulgaria. Communism was being tossed out by many countries, and they were moving towards democracy. I asked a young man to join me named George Hamilton.
Yeah, it was really amazing to get the call from Madeleine to go to Bulgaria to visit when they were holding their first elections.
One of the things we learned was that the first democratic demonstrations where people could march in the streets, which of course was impossible under communism, occurred about the environment. I thought it would be really interesting to start an organization that focused on environmental cleanup and change, and maybe parallel to that, focus on democracy building.
Yeah, I think in the United States, the concept of civic engagement around environmental issues was relatively new. And Vermont, where we come from, Madeleine, Kunin, and myself, and others that started ISE, is a very strong community-centered state. It's also a state that has long had an environmental ethic, that because of our working the land and all of it in our history. And so combining environmental ethic with economic prosperity with a strong sense of community was kind of intuitive for us.
George wrote a one-page plan, and we brought it to the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. He was interested, much to our surprise. I mean, this wasn't a huge detailed plan. We met with a group that was concerned about a polluted river.
And what they wanted was decentralized decision-making. They wanted to address these very severe environmental problems that had been poisoning the people for many years, and they wanted to take action. So we, working with many of the partners over there, designed some programs to help different towns and small cities set priorities and take action around environmental health issues.
George had arranged for all the stakeholders and the friends and neighbors to get together. We held a meeting, and we had a flip chart to write down what different people recommended. The remarkable thing about that meeting was that was the first time that anybody had seen a flip chart, and that their opinions were verified and substantiated. We wrote down what each person proposed, just like you do in any meeting with a flip chart. But that was new to them, that their voices could be heard and taken seriously. Eventually, we did succeed in cleaning up the river. We always combined, environmental action with participation and democratic participation. We try to rethink how ISC works at the board meetings. What is our purpose? How do we fulfill it? And of course, George Hamilton deserves a lot of credit for not only building IFC, but knowing when we needed to either make a U-turn or at least swerve a little bit in a new direction.
We really weren't doing very intentional work on the climate issue until about 2005, when the board decided that we wanted to focus on the climate issue more intensely because they felt it was the biggest threat to sustainable communities. And as you know, we believe that sustainable communities are the foundation of a healthy and peaceful planet, and that climate change was the biggest threat. We wanted to work on it. And so we chose to focus on the United States and Asia, where the biggest emissions were coming from. For the United States, we designed programming focused on local government and working with champions in local government who could drive solutions around greenhouse gas measurement reduction, urban sustainability, a whole host of issues designed to make their cities more prosperous and climate friendly. So we worked on resilience, clean energy development, renewable energy development, quite a few topics. But soon we realized that a lot of this work, while very successful in addressing the climate issue, created a lot of unintended consequences, particularly affecting groups that were not always at the seat of the table when deciding how best to improve their communities. So we realized that racial injustice in the United States and social inequality, income inequality in the United States and Asia were also important threats to building strong communities and therefore a peaceful and healthy world. And so we started focusing much more intentionally on equity and inclusion, identifying and addressing structural racism, and working with and helping to improve our effectiveness on this, as well as to diversify our staff and work with new partners who could help us better understand and work more effectively on these issues. This is not something brand new to us, whereas the United States, our initial focus was on, again, almost from a top-down perspective, working with cities. The bottom-up approach was very much in our DNA. So we had this approach inherent in our mission, and then now we've come back to it and are getting smarter about addressing it in the United States as well.
We cannot afford to be bystanders. That when we see injustice, even in minute forms, it behooves us to speak up, to speak out. And my whole life trajectory is not to be neutral, except in certain circumstances where it is commanded, but to take action, to be engaged in life. I feel so fortunate that I've been able to do that.